Hey,
Did we do it?
it looks like it. Wow. What a headache that was.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, that's me and technology. So,
It's all good. Hey, we're up. That's all that matters.
all right.
God. All right. Well, anyway, how was snowboarding?
It was good, man. It was good. There was a lot of dodos on the hill today, but it was fun. I just went with my youngest daughter, so it was a good time. So
Awesome.
it's cool now that I've been riding for 20 some years, and now with my kids out riding, it kind of reinvigorates my interest in it quite a bit. And uh, it's the proud part of getting older with kids. So I have a really good time with them, and it's better than
Really?
them sitting around and dicking around on their phones or watching TV or whatever. So
Oh, sure. My the thing with me and my oldest has been we got him a drum kit and he has a guitar, so he kind of plays around on both of those. And then also like pro wrestling. Like I just took him to go see WWE like a couple
oh,
weeks ago.
nice.
Yeah. So music and wrestling, that's been our thing.
There you go. I
Yeah.
got two girls, so I don't get to indulge in a whole lot of guy stuff. So
Right.
snowboarding in that regard then is great because it's so neutral. And I know music is too. And I tried with my kids when they were really young, and they just like the initial interest was there, but then once the dedication to actually commit to playing
Right.
an instrument or whatever, it was just kind of, which is fine. It's
Yeah.
that hope that my kids would do things that are passions of mine, but they're their own people, and I just support them, whatever their interests are. It's interest to me just because they're my kids. So
Oh, absolutely. I I think just about every parent's at that point too.
or should be, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Should be. Should be.
Yeah. So,
But
but they're good. They're both real physical, real active kids, and I'm extremely grateful for that.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems like it's, or at least the general idea is that that's a more and more rare thing.
Seems
Uh,
like it. Seems like it. And I battle it probably just like every parent. You need technology to a degree, but when is it too much? And I fight very hard to keep my kids away from social media and just the toxins and the weight of what social media really is. And
sure.
Facebook wise, I backed out of Facebook probably going on 2 years ago now. I just deleted all my friends and left. It's such a toxic platform that everything that I wanted to get out of it, I was no longer getting out of it. So I
Sure.
still run my business pages off of there, but my personal page is just so
Right.
I don't really pull anything out of it. I mean, I like Facebook Marketplace. That's about the extent of it. So
Right. I've done the exact same. I haven't had a personal Facebook account in probably 6, 7 years,
yeah,
maybe more like 7 or 8. I think it was right around the Clinton Trump election. I think is when I
yeah,
deleted mine.
tough, man. I mean, I think it gives you more reasons to not like people than to like people.
Yeah.
And I firmly feel like the less you really know about personal opinions, the more you're going to like somebody. And I think there's 1,000 things that we can connect on, even say you and I, and a million things that we can't. So Facebook is probably the worst of every platform when it comes to that, to really just um, between algorithms and they're planned to divide, and to me it's blatantly clear that that's what their goal is. And the it worked. The more people argue, the more they're engaging. if you and I get along with everything, we'll probably engage, randomly a couple times during the week. But if you and I going at each other's throats, we're probably going to engage 10 times a day. And I'm just waiting for you to say something so I can get back at you. And it worked for Facebook. And I think you can see that as it went through, as you say, the height of elections, when political energy is so high, it's so easy for people to just get pissed off about really, you know, nothing. And I'm not saying, politics is nothing. I'm extremely, you know, focal in my own mind and in my own family unit with our politics, as I feel every family should be, but that's my business, you
Sure.
know. Sometimes I throw things out there, but for the most part, I really don't care if you and I agree on politics. It's good that we probably don't on everything. Otherwise, um, then you end up with, I think, bigger problems if everyone's just agreeing for, a standard level of flat. So,
And people do. I was watching something earlier, and I like the reference of it. Basically, turns into team sports, like that level of fanaticism. It doesn't, and people don't. People will get hung up on their differences as opposed to, what common ground that they might have already had.
right.
You know,
Right. And I think, for everyone who remained on Facebook, I think those strains are evident. There's people that I know, uh, even people that when I left Facebook, that had a problem with me doing so because of the reasons that I did, which is just stupid. I don't want to
right?
engage in that kind of stupid. you
Yeah,
know, I'm not going to change your mind. You're not going to change mine, and that's fine.
sure.
It's like the things that used to fill my feed, music and art and sport was no longer there. It's like you engage two or three times with someone on a topic that is heated for you, and they pick up on that, and then that's all they pilfer through your feed, and whatever gets you fired up. It's
Yeah.
like the happy meter on Facebook probably went from an average 90% to 2%.
Yeah.
Where people just weren't going on there to look at things that they really enjoyed. They were going on there to, like you said, find the things that pissed them off and then make comments. And next thing you know, you're fighting with 50 people. And what are you accomplishing? Nothing.
Absolutely.
It's
That's
anti-social media. It
right.
teaches people how not to communicate.
Yeah. That's which maybe this isn't, I guess in hindsight, it might not be the best practice, but one of the reasons why I liked jumping over to Instagram is because you can kind of curate your own experience to a degree.
Sure.
Which, yeah, sure, that is technically putting yourself in a bubble in a way. But I mean, I have the news and I have actually talking to people, and I have other ways to kind of branch out and pick up on the outside as opposed to just like this little pocket device where I just want to look at guitars or keep up with bands or what have you.
Right.
You know, I which really, what positive things do people really take away from Facebook anyway? You know what I mean?
I don't
Anymore, very little, I think.
I don't I've tested things on there. Um when I owned Blackheart, it was a whole different world on Facebook. I ended up pushing 17,000 followers. I was connecting with people. The engagement was very high. When people liked the page and followed the page and were interested in what I was doing, um, the engagement was there. And then you could tell when they implemented their new changes for marketing and, when their algorithms changed and you put posts out there and what used to get, 100 people engaging in something out of interest was getting five, six, seven, um, because they want me to pay for it. They want me to pay to reach the people who care what I'm saying. And I just think it's nonsense. And I get it. Like, it's their platform. They want to make money and whatever else. But, when just that point of understanding you're not getting what you're actually interested in, If I come to your page and I subscribe to your page, it's because I want to hear what you have to say. But if Facebook deems that they want to filter me other information, and there's 20 pages that I've subscribed to where I've never seen anything from it, and I know they're posting, I just don't get to see it unless I physically go to their their page, and so
Right.
I really lost interest in it, and it was disheartening because it was a great way to connect with people, and especially when you're pushing a product, for people to be able to connect and find that product and have access to the information on that product. And there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of choices, a lot of options for people, and at that time it was a great way to showcase what you were doing. I think for bands as well.
No, absolutely. I, it's social media has done a lot of good for a lot of people. I feel like I had a discussion on here recently with somebody that social media and YouTube and Bandcamp and all of like the internet platforms are becoming kind of like the new equivalent to playing like, your local VFW hall or something back when, we were younger and stuff. Um, it's harder and harder for bands to kind of branch out and do things. You can kind of reach a wider audience that way, and typically anyway.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I think I completely agree, but I think even um and not it's been on tandem, but like the relevance and the importance of a live show has been questionable for two plus years now, and
right.
for the ability to connect with people, and take like an old guy like me that still plays, it gives what we play, it's US popular, but it's definitely in other countries. I mean, we outsell our US sales easily every time we release something, in European countries and and whatnot. And it's things that we never would have probably made that connection with if it wasn't for social media. So I am grateful for those aspects of it, and I think Bandcamp's huge for that. It's kind of band and YouTube as well. That wonderful rabbit hole that you can just take and go from one thing to the next thing, and you know find an artist who's involved in one thing. Even like the encyclopedia. Taking and seeing whose band members are, and then clicking
Yeah.
and follow. I can't tell you the nights I've done that. And I found some very, very great bands as a result. So, which I never, as much as I hate the internet, it does have its shining moments that I just wish there was more of it.
Oh yeah. It's definitely give and take. I'd like it to be more of what it was even maybe like a decade ago, where
Right.
it's back then it was strictly whatever you made it.
Right.
Algorithms and things like that are becoming, as they become more advanced, it's like they try to steer you into these different directions, and you really have to almost fight against it to try to find new stuff.
For sure. I mean, it's sad, that you're basically a marketing tool every time you log on.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
just companies trying to pay to have your data and your thoughts, to sell your product.
It's interesting to me that there's actually courses in like literature that people trying to educate like content creators and things like that, like social media people, like how to basically kind of beat the algorithm, or how to kind of work alongside it and put it more in your favor. Little tips and tricks. I've got like a little cheat sheet that supposedly like I do like one rig post a day, and my little cheat sheet's supposed to be like, oh, post on Mondays, post between this time and this time, Tuesdays this time, things like that. Don't try not to do more than one post a day, things like that. Because I think it also will kind of like punish you if you do a little too much.
Right.
You know, I feel like that might. I feel like I might be in that zone at the
Well,
moment.
I like with our label and stuff, Thomas is, he's on top of stuff he's way, carries way more knowledge in this than I ever will or honestly care to, because I'm so like just checked out of it mentally. But he'll say, we're gonna, announce this, but don't announce it until this time on this day and whatever. And it's like, to me, it's doesn't make any sense. And I get what they're doing, but to cut through the noise and the static, and he understands all that stuff, and at least he does. And I think he has to in order to get through to people. But I just do what he says, and when
Right.
it comes to my own stuff, I'll post when I have a minute, because I don't base my free time around when Instagram or Facebook thinks it's optimal for me to do so.
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time right now making sure things do get posted. So
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of days where, I'll make our post when I'm on my last break at work at like 6 a.m. or something, even though, supposedly it would benefit me more to post later, which I don't even know if it really makes a difference, to
does
be
it
honest.
doesn't right?
So who knows? But all right, enough social media talk. Let's talk gear.
You
What
got it.
uh, what is your well? First off, when do you guys have anything scheduled tour wise or show wise?
At this point, we've got a few local things we're working on, like regional things we're working on. But for tour and stuff, nothing, to be honest. We've got, we just finished the new record. We just got the final mix back from Andreas actually yesterday. So we've been hashing that out for months. We are probably the slowest recording band in history. So it's pretty much where a lot of bands will spend time playing shows and traveling and doing that stuff. We're constantly in the studio. And it's just the way we've evolved as musicians. We're all, you know, and I shouldn't even be embarrassed to saying it, but I mean, we're all, I'm 47, Jay's 48, somewhere in there. Bill is my age, 47. Matt's the young one in the group. But, my days of just wanting to be on the road and be away from my kids and be away from my family and my businesses and everything my priorities are just completely different now. So my thrill
Sure.
comes out of recording and putting out a good record and marketing that record online and pushing that and trying to do what we can to try to get on some shows that make sense. That's more where we're at. So up until this point, with we released our last record at like the absolute worst time you can. We released it in March of 21, and it was just, I mean, everyone's canceling everything. I mean, we had a handful, a dozen or so shows that we had all lined up ready to go, and every one of them was just done. So we shifted our focus completely. We put out a small EP of some things and then went right back in and started working on the next record. And so we have been pretty much since Divine, we've been working nonstop in the studio. So, really pushing this last record. And hopefully it shines through in there, but we've been pushing the envelope on a lot of things and really just expanding our vision of what we're capable of doing, and seeing how far we can push our style, and not, we're not reinventing the wheel by any stretch. I think it's just seeing within our own skill set what we're capable of doing. I think it should shine through a little bit on this record. We've spent a hell of a lot of time on it. So,
Well, I know I'm beyond stoked to hear it. I've,
I'm just glad to be, honestly, I'm glad to be done with it, because it's like, especially like the last 3 months has just been like, you get into final mix stage and, our producers in Denmark, and it's just files back and forth all the time. And, you're on your 10th mix of things and your
okay.
ears start going crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going back from saying, okay, I really like this balance of things, but you know, our overhead's sitting in here in the appropriate pocket where they're not battling certain frequencies, and you know, you're dealing with, especially, you know, we tune to A sharp, so it's a lot of frequency battle between guitars and bass and kick drums and everything. So your brain, after you do this so many times, you just shot. It's just crazy. I don't know how bands can sit in a like and record an album and go through that stuff, and it's a year process, like say the bigger bands like Metallica or somebody. I would just
Sure.
completely lose my shit, you know,
Oh,
just trying to focus, and you go tone deaf to things. And you know, I get into this weird musical funk when once we start recording and we're tracking, I almost don't listen to any music at all, because it's a distraction for where I think our project should be going. You know,
hmm.
you, no matter how much any musician tries to admit or deny, it's a fact. If I sit and listen to this type of thing nonstop as I'm writing or recording, that specific thing is going to shine through in what you're doing. It just is the way it is. That's where your mind is at. So I try my best to just shut that off. And I don't listen to much of anything at all. A lot of talk radio, a lot of, you know, silly things, you know, that are, you know, instructional videos, snowboard videos, whatever it is that kind of gets me away from metal for a minute, so that I try
Yeah.
to have as pure of a vision as I can going in with my own stuff. So,
Oh yeah. I talking about the fatigue. I've been a well. I was actually trying to work on a pedal demo earlier today,
mm,
and I wanted to change it up and actually do a recorded track as opposed to just my phone. And it brought back my memories of the couple of times that I've been heavily involved in a mixing of either an EP or whatever. My old band and then my solo thing that I've done. And both of them started off kind of cool and exciting. And then by the end of it, I'm like, I never want to fucking do this again.
it's tough, man. I think, you know, I think it's the point that separates uh, from mediocrity. So when you get to a point where you're frustrated and you just want to be like, yeah, that sounds fine. That's fine. I'm good with it. Whatever is usually the point where you shouldn't be doing that. Like you need to take a break for a second and then revisit. And it's the hardest step because I think most people get impatient. They want to get that record out. They want to do, you know, right now, I'd say even the last 5 years, maybe more, where relevancy is not as weighted on live shows as it used to be. It's how relevant you are on material release, video release,
Yeah.
staying in the news, staying on the tip of someone's brain, and people get too antsy to just release something, in my opinion, and where they should just kind of pump the brakes a little bit and make sure that that final product is, you know, everything it can be. And you know, there's a handful of records from artists where I thought, God, man, I waited 2 3 years to hear the new release, and that's the vibe I get from it, is that you should have
Right.
just slowed down a little bit, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely. Uh, yeah. Some bands I think kind of fall slave to label pressure too with that.
Yep, it's tough, you know. You know, I've never understood how bands can travel for, you know, like take Origin for example. I mean, those guys were, you know, I worked with Mike for years with Blackheart, and those guys they live on the road.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you find time to be creative, you know, and how do you find time to work on future things? And so, I mean, I've always had a huge amount of respect for bands and musicians who can do that thing, because I don't know, I get too singularly focused on certain aspects of things. And I, you know, like if we're in the process of tracking guitars or something and we get a good show offer, it's very unappealing to me to break my uh, mindset from saying, you know, tracking whatever we're doing to start rehearsing and prepping for a show, to go play a show and then try to get back into that same mindset again of tracking. You know, that it irritates the crap out of me. And that we spent,
Yeah.
on and off trying to, you miss out on shows for, 14, 16 months or whatever it was. And then you get a couple opportunities. So you're like, yeah, let's do it. And then you're in the middle of, we took and did, 3 or 4 shows, through the last half of the year. And it was, it was frustrating for me because that wasn't what I wanted to be doing at that time. I wanted to really be focusing on finishing this product that, and like I said, we're slow anyways. So it's just slowing us down, that much more, and breaking that creativity flow for me. So, but I'm
Gotcha.
a baby, so.
Nah. Well, I mean, kind of like what we were talking in the internet age. It sounds like your priority on just having the finished product, which is then going to be available for the entire world. Where you know, touring, you're only limited by where you can be at any given time.
Right, right. And I think that's a great way to look at it. Is I feel like if I can, um, and I think we're all of us are in that same boat, from Angerot. So it's, you know, really trying to pour everything you got into that product, so that product is as great of an example of where we all are right now.
Yeah.
And really pushing that out to as many ears as we can get on it. um, and 10, 15 years ago, the way to do that was touring.
Hmm.
And now it's just, I'm not so convinced that that's it. I mean, and and maybe I'm convincing myself that because touring to me is just really not, it's not in the cards for me to do. Um, if I do 90% of what I've worked my ass off for is just gonna waffle and struggle. So it's knowing my limitations and travel and stuff like that, and I get into that spot right now where it's like, if I get 2 weeks to go and travel and do stuff, I want to go with my family. I want to take my kids. I want to go travel. I want to go to the beach. I want to go do these things that I, as a near 50-year-old, those are things I've earned in life, and that's what I want to do, as opposed to go live in a van for 2 weeks.
I I'm married with 2 kids, and I completely and totally understand.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like I
dude. If
get.
you're not with them right now, you don't get to go back and be like, hey, remember when I was gone and I didn't, you know, I don't want that. I didn't have, uh, I had a good relationship with my parents. They're amazing people. My dad passed, 15 years ago, and I didn't have that. I was dirt poor. I didn't have those opportunities. I didn't get to travel. I didn't get vacations. I didn't get any of that crap. And I just have always, since, I was little, had that goal and mindset that if I was going to commit to having a family, I was going to give them more than what I had and more experience than what I had. And I traveled. I went on my first tour when I was 14, and I toured a ton through my early years. So I don't have any complaints about that. And that was my way of getting out to see the world. And, I didn't fly on an airplane until I was 24 years old and married. I didn't have those experiences. I didn't get to do that stuff. And I think that is living. And my kids deserve every bit of that experience. So as much as I can fly and show them how beautiful our country is, and from ocean to ocean, there's so much that is worth seeing and worth experiencing. And that's my commitment as a parent, to be able to work my ass off so they can enjoy that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Um, Man, got me motivated to pack
You know,
a
it,
road
it's
trip.
it's the sad part about it is, I mean, I still have that thing in my head where it's like, gosh, I wish I was 22 years old again, and I could just jump in a van and go and know what I know now and apply it to my 22 year
For
old body.
sure.
And and so there's things I don't like to ever sit and think like, man, I regret this and I regret that. But um, that's one thing I wish I could sort of kind of blend the two lives that I have lived, you know, and apply my more aggressive, you know, when I was younger, I was too passive with my drive to achieve. And now that I'm older, I have, I'm not afraid of business. I'm not afraid of starting a business. I'm not afraid of running a business. I'm not afraid of the obstacles and the headaches that come with running a business, um, because I just did it and I have repeatedly done it. And now it's a challenge to me. So when I think about those things and when it comes to attempting them, it kind of gets my blood flowing a little bit to where I used to just be scared shitless of trying.
I,
Now I just I get a thrill out of it.
man, it pretty much sounds like me when I was younger. You know, uh, like I got Pro Tools and a laptop like when I was in high school, um, and I didn't do anything with it for like a year or something, like till after I graduated.
Hmm.
Even even though I had a band in high school, I just, you know, and I would write and I practiced my ass off, but I never took the time to learn to do that. And I thought, no, I need to play shows first. No one's going to listen to that stuff, or, you know, follow us on MySpace or whatever.
Right.
No, if no one knows who we are, they're not going to find us on there. So my priorities were elsewhere, and I just wish I would have just sat down and made myself learn it, and you know, try to dig deep into that side of things,
Right.
and more into promotion and things like that. And yeah, just like you said, too passive about a lot of things.
Yeah, I always when I see and it's not very often right now to be honest. You know, when I see younger and by younger I mean like I said, I started touring when I was 14, and I promise you, there's not a whole hell of a lot of much of that going on right now. You know, and when I see a younger person, so late teens, early 20s, who is showing a little bit of ambition, even, you know, and especially when they get into that, you know, fearlessness of taking a chance, that is, you know, I've got my oldest daughter's 13, and she's got a couple of her friends that are little guys that are there's two of them that where I can kind of see that like they're just not really afraid, and either they're too naive or just don't know what it's like to fall down, but it's admirable, you know, to where I was just too afraid, man. I swear to God, I just was always so worried about a consequence of taking a chance that I never took a chance. And you know, at least I figured it out at some point in my life to try, you know. And I think people would be surprised if they just threw it all out there. You know, I have people say things to me quite often as far as, you know, whether it's guitar stuff I've done or the coffee company or whatever it is that I've done, you know, and about how I have time to do these things or how I figured it out even, you know. I mean, guitar manufacturing, no one's out here holding your hand and giving you advice and telling you where to go and what, you know, what factories manufacture at top tier. No one's going to tell you that. So you got to kind of go through the weeds and take your tumbles and fall and basically fail 50 times before you figure out the right path. And I think Blackheart, you know, I did my own businesses, you know, right out of, you know, I went to design school, and right out of school, you know, at the kind of the the bloom of the internet, I got into web design and started my own business and whatever. But I did that out of completely different reasons than would like say with Blackheart or whatever. When I started with Blackheart, it was kind of an accident. I played BC Rich forever, just like everybody, but primarily just out of looks. And there were certain things that I didn't like, certain things that I did like. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to make my own. and went down that road and found a manufacturer that would work with me, and they were terrible. It was an incredibly terrible experience. I think at that point, $5 grand of my own money, and at that point, $5 grand was like, what 50 grand feels like to me now, and it was everything I had, and it turned out like crap. And it would have been that moment for a lot of people. You put out a record and it sounds like, and it just flops, or whatever the case may be. That's usually when people are like, well, I guess I'm not meant to do this, or this is just not. And for some reason, it set a trigger in me where it was like, all these other companies are doing it. All these other small manufacturers are doing it. What am I doing wrong? And how can I fix it? So instead of giving up, I tried to fix what I got, and I found a very, 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 very talented luthier here that I could work with to take the crap that I had to turn it into sellable product that actually was decent. And then it cost me more money and more time. But at that point, then I was like, there's no way I'm just going to give up, because I've invested too much into this thing, just too much of myself. Money's money and whatever. But it's when your heart gets into something and you get committed to it. And I was just like, man. So I just fought through it. And eventually I hooked up with a guy who was a rep for Seymour Duncan. And I owe him a lot, because he saw what I was just explaining. I wasn't willing to give up. I wiggled myself into NAMM, ended up meeting him, and told him my issues and my problems, and cried on his shoulder and told him, man, I just want to be a small part of what I want to be involved in music in a way that is beyond just playing in a band. And he connected with where I was at mentally and put me in touch with some people at a manufacturing plant in Korea called Unsung, and those gentlemen were fantastic people. And it was the opportunity that I had been waiting for 3 years. I mean, I went through the dirt where I was waiting for my name to be just completely drugged through the internet trenches of and it never happened, because if someone had a problem, I fixed it. If I just was committed to figuring it out, and somehow I did. I think I could have done a million times better than I did, but I managed to do it by myself, and it's something that I'm still pretty proud of. It wasn't easy, man. But
Right. I remember following Blackheart back when I had a Facebook even, and followed it for quite a while, and then it was just like kind of like poof, out of nowhere. And I always wondered like, oh, what happened to him? Then stumbled across Legion, and of course, obviously we've been in talks. I bought a Nihilist, and I've had so many people ask me about it since then. It's like have you tried one? It's like, what are they like, or what are your thoughts on it? I'm like, I'll let you know when I have it. It's like,
right.
It's like I've never touched one. I've only seen a video or two, but I know of Chad through reputation, through Blackheart and everything else, and Brent Ferguson vouching for you, and
Yeah,
and I was like,
he's a good dude.
so,
And it's amazing to me. It was amazing to me with Blackheart back then. But really right now with Legion, and we've discussed this too, that I'm taking a completely different route with Legion. I'm eliminating all the things that really tainted my love for making guitars, and just wiping it off right now. And I'll deal with it when I have to, which, a big part of that's endorsement, as we talked about, sadly, but that's the truth. So I decided this time around, I'm not going to bribe people to have interest in what I'm doing by throwing a name out there. It's inevitable. It is going to happen. I do have some guys that's, I've been friends with and I've worked with in the past, that, I still talk to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that have expressed interest in doing it and repping my product. But it's different because they're my friends and I have years of history with them. And I know, as we did, had a chat about prior to me, endorsement, the sad part about endorsement is um, endorsement should just be called loyalty. It shouldn't be called endorsement. It should be called, do you have a loyalty agreement between this product and this person? Um, that if you agree and support what I'm doing, then I should be on the exact same flip side of that coin, right? And it takes both sides of that coin to make the coin. And that is not really how a lot of things panned out with Blackheart. And I learned it in a very difficult way. When it came to Blackheart, for the longest time, I handled all the A&R stuff with it. And I got so tainted and jaded with it that I had to hire one of my best friends out of Lawrence, Kansas to help mediate things because I was losing my patience with people. And it's not a good feeling to have. It's not a good place to be. And he's just a better, maybe more passive than I am on a lot of things. If you and I are talking and we're dealing with the business stuff, I'm just going to tell you how it is. And you can take that and run with it, or you can hate me, but it's just who I am. I'm not going to fib to you. I'm not going to lie to you. If it's something that's not working out right, then we're both going to know.
Sure.
And I felt like, it was just a rough road that I was going down, and it really started to anger me that I would invest in someone so heavily, but they wouldn't do the same because they were just looking for the next batch of free shit from somebody else. And, it's a very, very tough, difficult road, and you can only feel like you're taken advantage of so many times. And the one thing that people, need to step back and think about when it comes to endorsements as a whole is that, if you're thinking of any of the big five manufacturers, the way they function, the way their business model is, the way their volume of production and their level of marketing investment annually compared to what myself or even, you take any number of small to mid-level guitar manufacturers is not even remotely close to the same thing. And, so many of these things too, if people look at what Legion does, for example, so their perception of the number of guitars I'm making, how many people I supposedly have working for me, or how many whatever, and what they're perceiving of something to what reality is not the same. And it's good that people think these big, great things and they have this vision of something, but behind the keyboard, behind everything else is just, primarily it's just me. So I'm trying to figure everything out. I'm trying to handle everything. And, my wallet is not thicker than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? So it's, if I'm gonna take and invest in someone in an endorsement level of something, it's that I hate saying, well, then, what's in it for me then? Because I don't have to do that, but to me, it's getting people to understand loyalty. And I've got two guys that, and I know I spoke to you real recently saying, I don't even know if I ever want to go down that road. Well, I had a nice long chat with somebody and he said, don't. And this guy it'll come out this fall who it is, but he said, just don't do it then. Don't do things that you don't like. And we came to an agreement that, they're going on tour this fall. And he said, you don't have to endorse me. Just if it's something where you want people to see it, I'll just play it. And it was like, dude, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's loyalty.
Right.
He wants nothing out of it. It's like, you get it. you know, and I mean, he's been playing for 30 some years. You know, he's one of those guys where he could go out and just say, "Hey, I'm going to hook up with ESP and I'm just going to get a bunch of free shit." Well, he's to a point where loyalty is what makes this. It's what's made death metal such a wonderful thing to be involved with as a whole. You know, death metal is, in my opinion, it's the only scene that strictly survives on a community, an underground community. There's really no major support at all.
No,
We are our own network that keeps this thing floating. You know, guys like you that, you know, you have an interest and you do it because you love to do it, and you support people because you have commitment and loyalty, you know, and that's what I wanted to reinvigorate me to have interest in working with musicians on that level again. Is like that's enlightenment, you know, like, okay,
for
that's
sure.
loyalty, you know.
I they there's definitely a lot of passion in the community, and I without going into specific details, there's been a couple things come up lately that people not like lashing out at me, more like just kind of venting to me,
Right.
and it's just like, wow, you guys are really, 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 really serious and very protective over this, and you know, I mean, to an extent, I am too. I guess I'm just more laid back about it, but
Right.
uh, it is very interesting to see how personal everyone, a lot of the people in this scene want to make it, and I think that's awesome, you know. Um, but which now all I can think about is I want to know who it is, but like you said, I'll have to wait till the fall. But and
It's a good one, and it's not a guitar player, so we'll just say that.
okay,
So
cool,
um yeah, so it's, you know, it's good. It's a good place for me to start, to consider that road again, you know. And like I said, it was brought about through two friends talking, as opposed to someone looking at it as, you know, what's advantageous for my business and what's advantageous for this artist. It was more just like two buddies talking and being like, hey, I think this is a, you know, if you want some support and help,
yeah,
I'll support you by letting you take this, and you support me by taking it, you know. So it's, and using it, and it is what you're using, so it is your gear, it is that. So yeah, it should, hopefully it's takes it in the right direction. And, you know, I mean, I struggle with it because there really is no better way for people to, you know, to get eyes on your instruments than live shows. But, you know, that's been a few and far between for
yeah,
2.5 years. So, you know, what do you do? You know, you hope for brave people like you to jump in and say, you know what, this guy, I trust him, and I'm going to give it a shot. You know, and I understand that, and I admire people who, you know, are willing to drop $1,000 on something they've never touched. And because of that, you know, it's my goal. I want to produce something to where when you guys get them, you're like, I can't believe it was only $1,000. That's my goal. You know, that it doesn't meet your expectations; it exceeds them. And I feel like everything I'm doing right now has surpassed anything I did with Blackheart as far as quality, and you know, my quality control and everything. I try to be as diligent on all those things as I can. You know, I don't need to make 1,000 guitars a year. I just don't. I need to make, you know, several hundred that are as best as they can be for the buck. You know, try to keep things to where the average dude can go out and afford to do, you know, pick up something quality.
sure. I can, at least on paper, the specs look absolutely ridiculous for what they are, like with the carbon fiber reinforcement and things like that on the neck and neck
Mhm.
through. Uh, I can't remember. Are they stainless steel frets on them too? I can't.
Some are right now, man. it's like anything else. There's getting your hands on what you need to get your hands on is tough.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit just the only one thing, and it's I actually both the guitars I play them, so it's really I think a lot of it's a psychological deal, but you can't get Floyd originals right now,
Oh,
so I deal with the Korean 1000s, and I use them. I've used them for boy going on 10 years now, and they perform pretty much on par for you'll get a lot of tech heads who will completely disagree with that, and um, I would say they are fantastic, but it's the best thing that I can get from Floyd Rose right now, so that's what I have to do, and but other than that, like even with my EMGs, I know a lot of people don't like them, a lot of people like passives, and we can get on the pickup argument for we can
yeah.
go down that road, and that could be the whole conversation. But um, it's even with them, I can't get stuff from them until April. So
Oh,
it's a battle, man. It's a serious battle. So basically, right now, I got to go through complete production and just hope those timelines
yeah.
line up and go. It's crazy. At this point, those are the only two real hiccups I ran into. My last run, I ran into so many problems. Nothing quality wise. It's just governments shutting down entire business sectors, and now my biggest fear right now is when I finish this run is getting them to my house,
Oh,
getting them to my office, because I am just dreading that they're going to end up sitting on an ocean liner, and what am I going to do about it? And I've got that's my biggest fear. I think everything else I've managed to jump through every hoop I can to make sure I have the factories on spot, my componentries on spot, and so I should be good. I set a deadline for manufacturing on this run out a little bit farther than I wanted to, but I think I'll beat it this time. So
oh,
we're
really?
hoping that's the case, and that's hopefully I didn't curse myself. But the thing that I think would be the tell all on that again is just how long transport takes. So
Gotcha.
hopefully by then the world kind of starts turning back right side up a little tiny bit, and I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but at least something with I work in construction quite a bit for one of my real jobs, and dude, it's a mess. You know,
Oh,
a $10 sheet of OSB is 50, $60.
so
It's it,
sourcing stuff and
it's
yeah,
dumb. Yeah, so sourcing is it's a nightmare for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people just we'll even probably a year. I didn't throw in the towel. I just said I'm taking a time out, man. I did that last run, and I don't like to disappoint. If I'm going to commit and do something, I want to do it to the best I can, and it's hard when I'm reliant on hundreds of other people just to get my product, that all of the componentry that I need through manufacturing, through my people to get things built the way they should be, through my QC, back out the door, through transport. There's just hundreds and hundreds of people that are involved in that. And so I just said I'm taking a time out and waiting until I wanted to just wait, honestly, until all of this nonsense is done. But it doesn't ever seem like it's going to end. And I started getting a lot. It was really weird. And sometimes in this kind of business, things will be real quiet for a long time, and then all of a sudden I'd have dozens of messages daily, and probably more than that, asking about when's a new pre-order, when's everything going through. I'd like to get in on this and put me in line and whatever. And it was like, I should just do this. And again, get that little bit of inspiration where people believe in what you're doing. And it's like, well, I can't let those people down either.
yeah,
I need to keep plowing ahead, and those people want something. They want that guitar. They want that bit of inspiration on their own right.
yeah.
And I can't be afraid to try to deliver. So we dove back in, and we're going for it again. So
I'm pretty sure I was one of those said people. I think I think I had like eyed the Legion page for so long, and then finally I think I just messaged you. I'm like, hey, when's the next run of these? And like just sent you a picture of whichever nihilist I was after. Like, hey, when's your next run going up? You know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long after that you announced like the next pre-order run, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's great. I am extremely grateful, for guys like you and everyone else who's supported what I'm doing and that they're excited for what I'm doing and they, because again, it's the dumb cliche saying, but I can't do it if people don't believe and commit. The whole pre-order thing is kind of a different approach from again with the Black Heart model, business model that I had. And I didn't know if it would fly, if people would say, hey, yeah, man, I'll throw down my hard-earned dollars for something that I know I'm not getting for, the foreseeable. And so I gave it a shot and it's working. And I think it will continue to work and probably even better. So the more guitars I get in people's hands and, where people are doing playthroughs and they're doing reviews and they're doing, tours with them and making videos with them and whatever. And I think the difference this time compared to last time is I'm patient. I'm not in a hurry. I don't need to be conquering Rome tomorrow. I enjoy doing this and I'm going to stay patient and I'm going to stay diligent because I want to continue to enjoy it. I don't want to end up in that mental brick wall that I ended up hitting with Blackheart. I want to enjoy the people that I work with and I want to enjoy my customers. I want to have that great relationship with everyone who buys something from me. And I need to be patient and just take my time in order to really make it happen that way.
oh yeah. Well, I know at least in the circles that I kind of talk to on here, and then certainly, obviously, since I pre-ordered mine, and I'm just like a little kid excitingly sharing about it. But I've definitely tried to put the name of you and a couple other builders out there as much as I can, and try to share it as much as possible. So I'm really hoping to see big things come out of it.
Well, I appreciate it. I really, really do. I mean, I can't. A thank you doesn't cover, the way I feel, and I'm probably as bad as thank yous as anybody. But it's. I am grateful. I am very grateful. I mean, I'm humbled by people who do support. I mean, and people who are excited and appreciate anything that I do. I don't care if it's music or guitars or coffee or whatever the dumb thing I'm doing next. It's, people who enjoy what I touch. I mean, it means the world to me. It makes me whole. It's that thing. I think, especially you take it all the way to just the simple root of a musician, right? Okay, so I've been playing in bands. I started playing in bands when I was 13, probably, and that when someone comes up to you and they say, "Oh man, this thing that you did, this record that you put out, completely changed my life," and it was at a time when I was in the dumps and whatever, and you're like, okay, that it almost doesn't seem like real, like you think about it in a personal sense. I think of like Entomb Clandestine. To me, that record changed my life. It really did. And Blessed Are the Sick changed the way I think about things. It's and now it's even take well, I had to we worked with Terrence Hobbs on the last record. For the longest time, Suffocation is all I listened to, just nonstop. And talking to Terrence and being like, dude, I don't think you understand. I don't think you really can understand that how much that stuff piloted me. It really did. It made me who I am. And or even Jack Owen's another one too. He's an incredibly humble guy, and I worked with him a crap ton with Blackheart and stuff, and he just thinks of himself as just another dude, and that he just is, but he also is undeniably one of the absolute pillars of death metal. You know,
Sure.
if his concepts wouldn't have happened through Cannibal, where would we be?
Yeah, exactly.
Things would be tremendously different, you know, but he doesn't think about that stuff. That's not what
Sure. Of
motivates
course.
him when he wakes, you know. So it's in my little small sense, you know, if someone appreciates anything, whether it's the guitar they pick up or the music they pop in their player that day, you know, if it's mine, then to me that's crazy. That someone enjoys that stuff, you know, that something that I touched is motivating somebody. So that is a tremendous lifter for me to be able to think that, you know, this guy just completely believes in this guitar and that's the only guitar he plays, and whatever, you know. I see Mike Flores all the time from Origin. He's still ripping that signature bass I did for him, you know, and it's like, that's his baby.
Yeah.
That's so crazy to me, you know? So
Well,
it's a good
certainly.
feeling.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine. Well, to appease the to appease the gear nerds who have probably been pissed off this whole time, let's let it's not the first time I've done it either.
Sure.
Dude, me and John Coons from Outer Heaven, I think we talked about like aliens for the first half hour of like a 3 hour live stream, and it took forever to talk about gear as he's sitting in front of a wall of amps.
All right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm subconsciously trolling people, but um, yeah. So what are you? What's your live rig actually going to look like for Angerot? I know you're rocking the Harvey Audio chainsaw pedals,
Yeah,
and you're
that's probably the biggest change up of things. You know, I've been using the same cabinets for years now. We have Jay and I, we each have two custom Vader cabs with the custom tuned eminence in them, and I've used so many different things in studio. I've used so many different things live, you know, and those cabinets are monsters. You know, he has done a tremendous job, and I think, you know, he still does things on small runs, and I know that people just miss the crap out of being able to go and buy a Vader whenever they want a Vader. And I've had so many offers on mine, and there's no way I'll ever part with them. I'll never change. They're incredible cabs, and I love them to pieces. So those are a staple. And then I've got two 5150s. I got a blockhead and then, or a block letter, and then I got a signature one. And they're both old as dirt. And I know a lot of people that are using like core HM2 stuff, you know, they'll move on to 6505s, or they'll, you know, some people are using fireballs, you know, on clean. But to me, there's just something super special about the way an old 5150 sounds with an HM2 or similar, and I don't know why. To me, they play so nice together, and but like I said, the biggest shift for me now is moving over to the Harvey Audio. You know, I've got probably like 8 or 9 HM2 pedals that I've collected over the years.
oh wow,
And I actually have Jakey Lee's old HM2 pedal that I
oh
picked up
shit,
years back. And but anyways, I had kind of gone through those. That actually, Jakey Lee's HM2 that I used pretty exclusively up until this point. Is just super nice pedal. It just has a good rage to it. And then my biggest thing with it is I love that chainsaw tone. Absolutely, obviously. But my demand for clarity is big. So, you know, we do a lot of, you know, up-tempo staccato stuff, and keeping that clarity in there has always been a challenge.
yeah,
And that was my thing when I started talking to Paul at Harvey Audio. what my goal was is I really want the that foundation of what an HM2 is, but I need a little bit more refinement. So it just shines a little bit more. It's like, everyone, talks about the Waza and it's got more gain and whatever. It's like, how can that pedal possibly need more gain? That's seriously, it's not the issue. The
Yeah.
issue is control
Yeah.
and, learning how to wield that sword that is an HM2. It's a very difficult pedal to put a leash on, and I've figured out some tricks with that pedal just through serious time. But now I think I've baffled a few people. When I'll go play shows because I can keep my volume up and let go of my guitar and it won't make a sound. And there's a trick to it with HM2s, and like I said, I stumbled across it, and I've had some pretty big bands that have been using HM2s for a long time to hit me up like, what are you doing? So it's kind of fun, but again, there too, like as we've gone through, and you'll see it on the new record too, and even the difference between Splendid to Divine, the guitars are more articulate. They're just more dialed in. That tone, has never left, but it's not, that old Bloodbath tone, where it's just like, wah! It's really trying to get that beast that is an HM2, but finding a way to make it modern isn't the right way to put it. But my demands on, like I say, it's just clarity and articulation a little bit more.
Oh, I totally get it. I haven't owned an original HM2 for a good few years now. When I had mine, I would max out the EQ, but I would not use the distortion at all. And the level just kind of boosted it to taste. And I basically just used it as almost like an overdrive, but had like the EQ section of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've messed around with kind of like some bands have done, messed around using it like, for guitar, like for recording, like for guitar tracks, but blending it with like a dry signal and things like that. The only one I got right now is that Doom Saw pedal that I did a demo of, which on its own is like a completely different thing. It's more of a fuzz pedal
Right.
on it than an HM2, unless you either EQ it or put an overdrive into it. But I mean, it's pretty cool. Just something just to mess around with and experiment with. But
Right. They're fun, man. There's so many clones out there now that, and I wouldn't, clone is just a word that I don't know if I like it or not. I think I mean, there are some straight clones out there, like that Sweet it's a straight clone, circuitry is the same, blah, blah, blah. But regardless, I think it still sounds different. Even the iMaster, which is like a $40, whatever, you know what I mean? It's still applicable, and it's different. To me, there's not a whole lot where you can plug it in, and then you plug in your HM2 and you A/B them, and they're apples. Hell, man, I got 8 or 9 of those things, and I could put them all in a chain, and they all sound different. They just do. And that's kind of the beauty of those pedals. But it's one thing with the chainsaw that I am really pleased with. Paul did a killer job. I mean, it's I put a side-by-side demo of that out there on our YouTube, and it's impressive how close it is. But it has that thing that I wanted. And, I started going down this path with Paul. It's probably been 2-3 years that we worked on it, and until we got to where we're at with it. And I'm extremely happy to where now I can take my HM2 out of my line and feel like I'm doing the right thing. I never was convinced that would be the case, but it's pretty cool. I'm happy with it.
Well, from what I've heard of it, because I have checked out the demo, I mean, it sounds awesome. Definitely some depth to it. Like
Right.
has a full sound, but it's still articulate.
Right. It's a little less than that irritating like Morningstar is be my best example, like in Tune Morningstar, when that mid-rangey ouch that HM2 loves to produce, we kind of tone that down a little bit and and let that lower end just do what it's supposed to do. So
Sure.
yeah, good ear, because that's what we're hoping to try to achieve with it. So, but then again, that is what helps with the articulation on that too, is getting rid of that hard to process
Yeah,
mid
yeah.
range.
So 5150 Vader cab, the Harvey Audio. I mean, you're pretty much a pretty meat and potatoes kind of player too, right?
That's pretty much just who I am. Period. With everything I do, I'm not a big tech guy. I've had so many people try to talk me down the road of processors and
Yeah.
emulators and whatever, and it's like, man, I just need a tube head and a 412 cab, and But so as far as any part of my chain, I run an NS2,
Mhm.
which a lot of people hate them, but there's a reason why I use it, and I'll send you a picture sometime. Um,
Okay.
it's uh, it's the key to putting a leash on an HM2. So they were meant to be together, and they meant to be together in a specific way.
Hmm.
So if anyone watches this and has a question, you have to message me and I'll explain it to you. But
I have an idea.
yeah, I'll send you a picture and
Yeah.
stuff. And then once you actually do it and you apply it, it's like a light bulb. You just
Hmm.
turn it on, you're like, whoa, how did I
Okay.
never know this? But it's
Yeah.
it's it's fantastic. And other than that, I do have like a small 7 band that I'll use every once in a while. It's very limited, and then I do have a small boost that I'll use, and I find myself using it less and less.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, things that I used to use on the first record, I've just find myself using it less and less, and just really focusing on my overall tone and dialing myself in for that sound specifically and applying it across the board. Jason's a little more flexible than I am on that, but I think as the band has progressed, I have to focus on so many. So I have to focus a hell of a lot more on vocals.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the first record, my vocals were pretty straightforward, pretty basic. I mean, lyrically, I thought it was decent, but the way I was applying them to things was uh, pretty dialed back. And every record that I come out with, I focus less on my ability to um, sing over top of guitar playing. And when I write my lyrics and I record them, I don't think like, am I able to play guitar under this at all? And so it's forcing me to dial things back a little bit
Yeah.
because my vocals. I think I've come a long ways in what I'm able to do and what I'm able to deliver, and um, it's important. It's gained a far bigger importance level than the little intricacies of guitar playing for me.
Yeah.
Jason's a far superior guitar player over me anyway, so he just covers up all my shit. So he makes me sound good. So
Kind of interested to hear the dynamics of it whenever the new album comes out, honestly.
yeah, there's some weird stuff on there. The best part about it is I get these off kilter ideas, like things that I wanted to try to do, and I'd always think like, man, what are they going to think about it when I actually hit the studio and try to do this? And so when we was in starting to track vocals on one of these off the wall parts, and I said, just don't laugh at me. Don't if it doesn't work, don't. And Jason turned to me and he said, do you think Travis Ryan is afraid of what someone's going to think when he came in there? And it's like, yeah, that's a really good point. And how do you know that you're able to do these ridiculous things unless you just try and sound like a fool for a minute? So I was like, okay, yeah, let's just kind of go for it. But I'm really glad that they kind of opened those doors for me, because um, there is some cool stuff on there, and it's I did some different things on the last record as far as just trying not to be straightforward, low end vocals, and just experiment a little bit and use my voice as an instrument. And, um, for me, it's like I said, my guitar playing and I've always felt that way. Like I know enough about playing a guitar to make me dangerous, and that's about it, and I never will be that elite shredder. I would never, that's just not in my MO to be that way. So my goal that, especially like once we started this band and moved on from the last band, my goal is just like, hey, I just need to be a damn good rhythm guitar player and a very good vocalist. So I need to focus on refining my playing so that I'm as tight a rhythm player as I can be, so that I can focus on being a better vocalist and, kind of let Jay do all the fancy stuff. So,
Right.
And that in itself has been a good challenge for me. So, rethinking how I play,
There's nothing wrong with the Hetfield school
Right,
of
right.
guitar
Well, and again, you're so on point there. And I know there's a couple of videos on YouTube too, just about, like even in Puppets era, where that guy was flawless, man.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's like the consummate rhythm player, and just how important that is. And to be, it's like the underrating of a solid backbeat bass player. It's critical.
And we could probably do like a whole separate thing dissecting what makes Hetfield so awesome. But in in summation, him as a musician, everything that is encompassing about him altogether as a musician is far more impressive to me than any lead that any other guitar player in Metallica has ever done.
Right,
Uh,
right. I would agree. I would
but
completely agree. I think it's gosh, it's one of those things that I've really, you know, I used to love those ripping leads, even, admiring, Terrence and guys like that, where it's like, what's going through your head when you write that stuff, and really like even to me, like necroticism, when that came out, it was like, God, there's so much soul in a metal solo. Are you kidding me? That's like, it changed the game. And then, I would sit at home and noodle and try to go down that road. And it's like, nothing beats a good riff. Okay. So thinking in that structure of, gosh, the best thing in the world is a song that has good riff after good riff after good riff after good riff, and I took and basically took that mentality, and now I apply that to my vocal approach too, is like, when we write songs, I don't want a riff in there that doesn't at least stand out in my head. So if, like, no mediocre stuff. And then if I'm doing vocal patterning and thinking about placement on things, to have that mindset, like, okay, well, we're just going to do verses, and then the chorus is going to, maybe the bridge and the chorus will be these cool standout parts. I joke around with the guys all the time that my goal is to have the first chorus, the second chorus, the third chorus, and the fourth chorus. That's the song, and every vocal part should be able to stand on its own. And so where on this new record, there's times when, Jay would be like, okay, so what's the chorus on this song? I'm like, I don't even know. You tell me, because my goal is to, to use my voice in the same presence of writing a riff. Like that's how important I think a good riff is. I think that's why it makes bands like the Deftones so strong. Bands like, even going back, like Helmet and stuff like that, or, Prong, something to where it's just that simple riff that, or SOD, man, things that are ever forever.
Absolutely. Well, that'll be a good transition into what is pretty much my wrap-up question here,
Sure.
because I got to get dinner for the kids. But so we'll use that as a transition into top 4 death metal bands and or albums. Just kind of what are the 4 ingredients that kind of make up who you are and what you do with Angerot and and all that?
Sure. Um, I would say it's like a lot of that changes. What's my favorite from uh, where I'll say it's the most influential band for me of all time. I find that it kind of shifts, but
Sure.
I'd say undeniably, Morbid Angel's probably been my biggest single influence um, through time consistently, to where I can go back and listen to a record and it still motivates me like it did, the first time I heard Blessed Are the
Yeah.
Sick, where it's just like, God dang, man, to where it holds its own against anything that's been put out before, during, or after, in my opinion. You Covenants and Domination, it's like they're unreal. And so I'd say, like mid era, early era, Morbid Angel is very, very tough to beat for me. And you know, uh, gosh, it's just incredible. We had the pleasure of playing with them on the Covenant anniversary tour, and I was like a kid in a candy store, just blown away, you know, um, by that material, and brought me back to high school and when everything was coming out. So Morbid Angel is probably right up there. Those the BCDs of Morbid Angel are the tops for me. Carcass is another one. Probably more like Necroticism, like I mentioned before, but Symphonies is probably my favorite release from them. That was one of the first records on vinyl that I purchased. My haul and transition into a lot of 90s death metal. I worked at a small record store here, and I got Symphonies, Left Hand Path, and Street Cleaner on the same day. And I did get Napalm Death at that time too. But it was like
Oh, yeah.
just changed me forever. I mean, that was it. So, but I would say like Symphony's Carcass is a huge one for me. I think it was a massive change for extreme music. So you're taking death metal, but you're injecting that flavor of grindcore into a
Yeah.
hybrid that really changed people's mindset. I think, and I think that record, it probably influenced people more than what it's given credit for.
Yeah.
Thirdly, I'd say Effigy, probably. I got a copy of that from Relapse, because the guy who ran Relapse at the time was actually from my hometown here. His parents used to live here. I don't know if they still do, but he stopped by. He used to play in a band called Suffer then, and Matt dropped off a cassette of Effigy, and it was just like unreal. I mean, that when that was out was, you'd go from stuff, Deicide was out at that time, and that was pushing envelopes, and then when you
Yeah.
hear Frank's voice for the first time, you're just like, that is a person, you
Right.
know, and the articulation that he's able to deliver with that guttural power. So much of guttural vocalists, it's a blur. It's it's like a
Yeah.
mix between, you know, uh, gargling marbles, but which is talented in its own right. But for someone to have that much power and that much throat and that audibility at the same time, it blew my mind away. So, very early Suffocation is fantastic. I still like, I like Pinnacle of Bedlam just as much as I like a lot of earlier
Yeah.
stuff too, but Suffocation is undeniably one of the best ever. And I'd say there's two others, and I know I'm going over my limit, but that's just too bad, I guess. Is The Bleeding. I think when we were talking about Jack earlier, it's like I had to tell Jack, like, that record, when you talk about riff after riff after riff after riff, and they're all so unconventional. They're not just, with all the hammer-ons and pull-offs and everything that makes up a riff, to where you'd have, certain riffs that are one chord strike. It's like, who does that? Nobody. And there's nobody to this day. Like if you write a riff like that, everyone's going to say, "Oh, that's like a Cannibal riff,"
Right.
you know.
I've
And
feel that.
you know what I mean? But it's like it's such a great record, and you know, it's Barnes at his peak, it's Jack at his peak. Everyone is on their game, and they didn't even know it when they did it. That's the cool part. They were just kids. And then probably the most over everything as far as influential is Entomb Clandestine. I know a lot of people hate that record, and to me, that record is flawless from beginning to end. I think it coined so much of what an entire genre of music is about. I think it has drumming on that record that no one, in my opinion, has ever been on par with ever since. I think Nick Anderson is he's one of the very few metal drummers that plays with soul. And you know, I think the same with vocal delivery on there. I think he did a tremendous job doing something different. But I think he's just an avant-garde type of person that, you know, I think he just wasn't a death metal guy that just happened to be playing death metal.
Hmm.
And that record is just, it's so creative, and for as young as they were, and you know, to follow up Left Hand Path, in my opinion, which I think was a very strong record, with a record that had the sound, you know, that they managed to work up, and you know, which drove us then to want to work with Skogsberg and try to be what my most influential album of all time. I mean, it was incredible, you know. But it's those things, you know, is checking off those life goals as you go. It's like, man, I worked with the same producer and the same engineer on my record. That shouldn't even be possible. And then, you know, having the next record where we had LG on as a guest on there, it's like, it's all this stuff is just a kid in a candy store dream come true, that I get to even have 5 minutes to work with these guys that made me who I am as a person. They undeniably led me down a certain path, you know. So those are my old ones. I'm an old dude, and there's a lot of new records that feel good to me and sound good to me, but it's hard for me. I feel incredibly blessed to grow up in the era of music that I did.
Yeah. I mean, there's still people even, you know, my age and even younger that are still going back and listening to those same records. So, I
Yeah,
mean, you can't mess with the classics.
that's true. It's the one thing, like when I meet younger musicians on everything, and I've worked with quite a few guys that are, you know, 10, 15, sometimes more years younger than me. Tell them, dude, you got to go back and you got to listen to where it all started to really understand why it is where it is today. And, you know, and you think like, you know, Obituary, Morbid Angel, Deicide, you know, all these bands were all coming out at the same time, and none of them were doing the same thing. It's absolutely amazing, to where now, you know, a new band comes up, and I'm just as guilty. I'm influenced by all these things that piloted me. So my band sounds, I'm sure some people listen to stuff and they're like, oh, that sounds like Morbid Angel. Oh, that sounds like Entombed. Oh, that sounds like, you know, because that's what drove me when they had no pilot. They just were doing what felt right, you know, and it's that birth of something that it'll never be duplicated again in extreme music, I don't think.
And you say that, and it instantly reminds me of every time I try to write some new music and put something out, I think it's influenced by this and this, or like it has some kind of vibes of this and this, or like a specific part even, you know. And when I play for somebody, it's typically completely different than what I was imagining. And they're like, oh yeah, it reminds me of like, and it reminds me of like old Black Dahlia Murder or older Behemoth, and you know, I'm like, well, that is pretty much the stuff I listened to when I was learning to play guitar. So I guess it makes sense.
It does. Yep. Yep. And
Like
then
you never
I
really you never really shake your influences from your formative years, I guess.
right. I completely agree. I completely agree. And, I do need to eat crow a little bit because when I said that I don't think it'll ever be, as inventive or whatever, every once in a while you get something uh, that kind of breaks those boundaries. And to me, it's so awesome when it happens. Like when Monolith came out from Cattle, it's
Yeah.
like, what? When you thought there could be nothing new. And then to me, when Ultimus put out their record again, it's like,
Yeah.
they just, and I wouldn't even say, I think it's raising the bar in musicianship,
Hmm.
but it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just ignoring the boundaries that people put on
Yeah.
things that of what is extreme or what is powerful or what's heavy, and letting true creativity bubble to the top. I mean, both those bands are just filled with tremendous talent, but sometimes it's when you can kind of reel back that talent a little bit, and it isn't about who's playing the fastest or who's got the best lead or whatever, and some of the best stuff shines. To me, I'm a big Demu fan too, and
Sure.
you think about the elements and the layers, and it's like the drummers of those bands through the years could constantly be blowing your mind. Okay. And same with their guitar players, same with their keyboard players. But there's always a time to just reel it back. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to just sit back here and let the musical layers do what they're supposed to do. And that to me is incredibly impressive. And I think that's, again, that's Ultimus, that's Cattle, and it's Demu. It's like those bands where um, it isn't, and it doesn't have to be reliant on 300 BPMs. It doesn't have to be reliant on arpeggios and 100 things that, it's taking and going from being a player to a musician and then letting that evolve. So there's good surprises still out there. I don't mean to sound like an old scorned guy that I only like things from 1996, but
It's actually funny you mentioned Demu because I've been on such a big Nick Barker kick. Like the couple records he did with Demu are still my favorite. Like
yeah, yeah, they're good.
they may not be like the favorite with like the real like cult, black metal fans or whatever, but the songwriting on those two albums is absolutely insane.
Exactly, and that's that to me. As I've gotten older, I remember when I was younger, my older brother got me into music. He's a tremendous guitar player in his own right. He did all the lead work on the Last Supper record that we did. But as we got older, he's always like, "Man, you're gonna slow down. You're gonna get into music that's more intricate, and you're gonna get into, more delicate music because that's a natural progression of a musician." And I was always like, "Man, I'm not going to," and I haven't. I think you can produce, and I think those bands that we're talking about are prime examples of that. Like you can produce insanely aggressive stuff, but you can also, as you're doing that, focus on the intricacies and the musicianship and the songwriting
Right.
and the power that, like, again, what it isn't about what you're doing all the time. Sometimes it's about what you're not doing that makes
Yeah.
that song so wonderful. So
Put the intricacy in the composition and making it memorable as opposed to shredding your face off and
dude,
blast beat.
I guarantee you, and I'll argue this with anybody, it's so much harder to write a riff that everyone's going to remember than to play a riff that nobody can play.
Right.
To write a riff that can last the test of time is it's always the goal for me, and I'll never achieve it. It's that you think about March of the SOD. That riff was
Yeah.
probably a joke when Scotty wrote it, but here we all are, and every metalhead knows the riff. And it's like that happy accident of writing that single guitar line that will be here forever. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, dude, this has been really fun talk, actually.
Yeah, man, I had a good time. I had a good time. I appreciate you, you asking me on and even, hey, having the interest to do so in anything that I do. So many thank yous.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate everything that you do. Appreciate your music and the brands that you put out. And I appreciate the insight the insight just as so this isn't quite a legitimate business yet, but kind of inching my way there, trying to make it into something. So
Sure. Yeah. Well,
been a
like I mentioned before, man, if you don't just, then you just will never know. You know,
yeah,
you have to go and throw yourself out there, and failure is not the worst thing in the world. Regret that you didn't do it is. So
absolutely. I agree 100%. So, dude, I appreciate you so much. Thank you again for doing this. And despite our
absolutely. Thank you.
days,
We made it. Somehow we made it. We're good.
yeah,
So,
absolutely, man. Well, dude, you have a great weekend. Enjoy that family. And
you as well, man.
thanks to everybody for tuning in.
All right. Have a good one.
Later, man.
Later.